I'm in the middle of a session review here, and I'm working my way through some double board PLO bomb pots, which we play on collection at Hustler, and thinking, man, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I decided to bring you on because you do.
Yeah, this is an interesting and very profitable sort of evolution that has happened over the last couple of years. I didn't know that it actually had infiltrated Los Angeles. I don't know how recent this thing is, but obviously, Squish My Tomato Mark Goon was telling me about this. I don't know how long they've been doing this at Hustler, but this is an awesome thing that's happened if you have any familiarity with split pot games or if you're willing to learn, because double board bomb pots are split pot games. Single board bombs are not. And this is why double board is so much better, because it is a split pot game. And whenever you have a split pot game that's a bomb pot, meaning that everyone's dealt a hand and they get to play, it is so profitable. You see madness, because a lot of times, even in like the most regular split pot game, which would be say like pot limit high low, like they have a half game over at Hollywood Park. I still think they run it. It's like half high low pot limit. One of the ways that people sort of navigate when they're not so good at high low, especially in big bet, is just play super tight pre-flop. So they don't get into situations where they hold like, 4, 5, 6, 6 and flop a set of sixes and not know what to do because they're just not in their pre-flop. But in a bomb pot, though, you're forcing the people into the pot. So it's a very, very interesting thing. And of course, in a split, I mean, it is a double board bombs or a split pot game. It's just instead of being split between the high and the low, you're split between two highs. So, I mean, that's sort of the nature of the game. And the same thing with no limit hold'em split pots, which you told me they're playing at Commerce now too. And no limit bomb pots. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, at 10:20 at Commerce, they're playing no limit hold'em bomb pots, double board no limit hold'em bomb
Right.
pots at collection.
Right. And the interesting thing about that is that, and I don't know if whoever thought of the structure is that, and I do have one double board hold'em video over in our Crushing Live split pot section of Crushing Live '08. The difference between no limit hold'em double board and pot limit is actually, I think the largest difference is the fact that it's no limit versus pot limit. And usually the antes are larger in the double board hold'em, which they should be, by the way, in a no limit game. But you can just blast someone off the pot because it's no limit. It probably shouldn't be played that way, to be honest with you. It probably, if they want to play double board hold'em, it probably should be pot limit. But good luck in trying to convince them of that. You know what I mean? Or trying to, all of a sudden in the collection, them doing a pot limit game. You know what I mean? But it probably should be pot limit. It would be a better game just because, it's kind of if anyone's played like No Limit '08, it becomes a lot of, No Limit '08 becomes a lot of pre-flop, but in this game there is no pre-flop. But just one thing before we get into the two hands, another thing that I will mention is that when you're playing this game, I'm talking about double board PLO, there is a true element of pot control. We talk about pot control in no limit games, which is kind of a faux type of concept in a no limit game, because of course you can bet any amount, right, in a no limit game. But a lot of people will never bet over the size of the pot. So if you check back the turn, you keep the pot at a certain amount and you don't expect someone to go like 4x all in, although some people are obviously capable of doing that. But in a pot limit game, if you don't bet on the turn, you truly are pot controlling because you're limiting the amount that your opponent can bet on the river. And what you'll find when you should be doing that is actually when you have a hand that might be the nuts on one side that is very vulnerable to a river card, where you don't have another strong hand on the other side, and you don't want to actually make the pot bigger, because if you make the pot bigger and your opponent calls you with some sort of, a ton of equity, they can put you in a real difficult spot because the pot is bigger leading to the river. Their river pot bet is bigger, right? So that's an interesting concept with this.
Yeah. coming from a pretty pure no limit hold'em background, it's really hard to adjust to these games. And your videos on double board PLO bomb pots have been really a godsend. These videos behind the paywall at Crush Live Poker. And so one of the central insights for me, and I guess this is pretty obvious, but it's just not something I ever really thought about in exactly this way, is constantly thinking about what you want to have happen in terms of, am I trying to bring my opponents along, or am I trying to get them out?
Yeah, push pulling. I mean, that's definitely a key concept that if you're dealing with not so shallow stacks and there's a lot of checking so that you get to rivers multi-way, and I think we're actually going to cover one of your examples sort of like this, where the pot is somewhat small, and then you make a nut hand on one side, but you have no opportunity really for the other side of the pot, then you want as many customers as possible, because especially with flushes, because the thing about flushes in PLO is if you have a nut flush, right, no one has the nuts along with you. It's not like a straight, right? So if you make a nut flush on one side and then somebody bets out into you on the river, especially when a lot of checking has gone on, they probably have the other side, right? So because you have the nut flush on one side. So they're not potting like the second nut flush. I mean, once in a while, somebody might do a two-way hand, but the point is that, if the small blind comes out and bets the river and you're in the big blind and you've got 6 people left to act behind you, you have the nuts on one side. Chances are the guy to your right's betting the other side. You wouldn't want to raise there. You want to call so someone else can hero along so you can get more money in the pot, because if you raise and you drive everybody else out and the other guy calls, you're not winning anything. You're just chopping with this guy on the side. So that's a pull. And then there are other situations where a push is when you're trying to raise people out, maybe because you have the nuts on an earlier street on one side with no chance on the other side. So you just want to drive everybody out, or you have something that's vulnerable, on the other side, something like that. But the other thing too, besides push pulling is that, and it's taken me years to learn this, so I wouldn't expect somebody who's a beginner to learn this, is that probably, obviously position is super important in every poker game. I can't think of another game, maybe besides maybe No Limit single draw deuce to 7, which they play at the World Series, which I'm not super familiar with, but I can't think of another game where position is more important than split pot big bet games. And whether that's Big O, PLO 8, or in this case, double board PLO, because if you're in position and you can figure out that you have one side of the pot based upon the action, you can basically liberally pot it in position, and you force your opponent to get a bad price, because they might have to call a pot size bet for just half the pot. And those odds change around in split pot games, and people don't think about this, because if you're playing a one-way game and somebody bets pot in No Limit Hold'em, right, 100 into 100, so you're getting 2-1, right? It's, the pot's 200, it's 100 for you to call. But if you're playing a split pot game and it's impossible that you're going to be good on one side, when someone bets 100 into a $100 pot, you're calling 100 to win 50. Because if you call, you're not winning your opponent's bet, right? This is only if you have a possibility of chopping. You're not calling to win your opponent's bet. You're only calling to win half of what's in the pot right now. So if the pot's 100 and a guy bets 100, you're calling to win half of what's in the pot without his bet. So you're calling 100 to win 50, so it switches around where now you're, instead of getting 2-1, you're laying 1-2, which means you have to be right 66% of the time or whatever it is in order to make the call. So at that point, like, if you have something on the other side that's not the nuts, a lot of times you're forced to fold.
So let's get into some of these hands. So this first one is a $50 double board bomb pot. There are 8 players, so there's going to be 400 in the pot heading to the 2 flops. I have ace 7 5 3 with ace high hearts on the button. So ace 7 5 3 with the ace and 7 of hearts.
Yep.
So 400 in there. The flops come 10 3 deuce with 2 clubs.
Okay.
And queen 6 5 with 2 hearts. So On the top board, I just have a pair of threes, not much going on.
Right.
And on the bottom board, I have a pair of fives and the nut flush draw.
And you also have a gutter to a 4 too. You have ace 7 5 3 and it's queen 6 5, right?
Right.
So you have a gutter to a 4, right?
Yep.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So it checks to me, and I check back. I assume that's not very controversial.
It's probably a little bit closer than you think. It's not very controversial 8-handed or 9-handed for sure.
Right, if it's four-handed, it's different.
Yeah, because your hand on the bottom with the nut flush draw and a pair and a gut shot, and also too, the top is 10-3 deuce, so you have a pair and a wheel draw with ace 5. You could, in a shorter, sort of a more short-handed scenario, absolutely make a case for betting just to take the pot down. And for the most part, a lot of people, especially when you're dealing with inexperienced players, they're going to play their hand straight up. I mean, people play their hand straight up anyways in PLO. Talk about double board. Like, you're not really seeing a whole lot of people going for like check raises here. And the interesting thing about this is that like the strong hands on these two boards, on 10-3 deuce 2 flush and queen 6-5 2 flush, which are the two boards, the strongest hands that are non-draws that you can have is top set, right? Set of 10, set of queens. Mm-hmm. Neither one of those hands is really strong enough to put a raise in if you don't have something going along with it, because both boards are so dynamic. Unless you had like a set of 10s and a set of queens, or like a set of 10s and a set of 6s on the bottom. So the sheer fact in the way that these boards are and it's checked to you means you're almost never getting check raised. So what ends up happening is you get a lot of fold equity, and it's not quite the same as Hold'em, where people are naturally going to check to you on the turn, so you sort of gain yourself a card. You will see more upfront betting when the nuts change, but there's that. But I would say 8-handed, and sometimes if you watch my training videos, because I've done a lot of double board VPIP games, which is on Poker Bros, which is obviously different from bomb pots. Now I do have some bomb pot games though too, and these games aren't 9-handed; they're usually 6-handed. So sometimes I'll overdo these spots when I get into long form double board bombs, where I'll bet here like into 7 ways, and it's a little bit of a spew. But if it was more short-handed, a case could be made for betting. But I'm okay with the check, and absolutely from out of position, it's a check for sure.
Okay. So still 400 in the pot heading to the turns. And the turn on the top board is the ace of clubs. So up there we have 10, 3, deuce, ace with 3 clubs now.
And you make aces up, right?
Right, with ace 3. So again, my hand is ace 7, 5, 3 with 2 hearts.
Yep.
So I have 2 pair with ace 3 on 10, 3, deuce, ace with 3 clubs. And now on the bottom board, it's an offsuit 7. So on that board, it's queen 6, 5, 7 with 2 hearts. And so I have 2 pair on that board as well, 7s and 5s, and still the nut flush draw. And it checks to me again.
Yeah, this one probably is going to be a check again, 8-handed, because so if you were heads up, this is the difference between bomb pots and like VPIP games, and you can sort of see the difference, right? Instead of being 8-handed, let's say that you arrive in this spot.
And by VPIP games, you're talking about like app games where you have to play pre-flop 35% of hands or whatever.
I mean, there's a pre-flop round. You can it's like a normal. It's like playing PLO, but it's double board.
Right.
So you play hands pre-flop. You can fold or raise or call pre-flop. So if you can picture this scenario where you were heads up going to the turn, and the only time you're going to probably be able to picture this is if you were playing in a game where you had pre-flop, right? So if you were heads up, this hand certainly is worth betting heads up, especially against someone who plays straightforward, because probably they don't have clubs up on top all that much, or if they do, they're weak. And you also have 2 pair on the bottom and 2 pair on the top. You basically like, you're not going to lose both ways right now, and there's fold equity. Whenever you can boil it down to, I'm not losing both ways and there's fold equity in a given scenario, a bet is worth it. But a lot of times that will only happen when it gets more shorthanded, whether that is because you have bet the flop and only got 1 caller, right? Or the game is shorthanded, or whatever ends up happening. If you can suss out that there's fold equity and you're good on at least one side, especially with a draw to the nuts, then it's worth betting. But here, again, it's 8-handed. It would be interesting instead of the turn being a 7, again, it's queen 6, 5, 7, if the turn was like a 4. Because if the turn was a 4 on that side, you'd have 7, 3 for a straight. And it's not the nut straight. And someone could very, very easily have 7, 8, which would be the nut straight, and check to you because there's clubs on the other side too. So that would be an interesting turn card if the turn was a 4 and you made the second nut straight with the same top club. Because again, heads up, you're gold, but 8-handed, if you bet and you get 2 or 3 callers, you're in trouble. But I would definitely check again.
Cool. All right, great. So we do check. So heading to the rivers, there's still 400 in there. The top board, the river is an offsuit 8. So now 10, 3, deuce, ace, 8 with 3 clubs. So total brick for me. And the second river is the deuce of hearts. So I make my heart flush. I have the nuts on the bottom board. The board is queen, 6, 5, 7, deuce with front door hearts coming in.
Yep.
And again, I have ace, 7, 5, 3 with the ace high hearts.
Right. By the way, Charlie, before I just have to ask one little subtle thing here too, is that I know that we're saying that you've got ace high hearts, but and we sort of washed over queen 6, 5 with 2 hearts. I just will say that you have the nuts if there's no straight flush out there. If the 6 and the 5 and the deuce are hearts and you don't have the 3 of hearts, it is something to consider.
The queen is a heart.
Okay.
Right?
So I was just going to say that it is something to consider. It's absolutely possible when 9 or 8 or 9-handed random cards are dealt that there's a 2-card straight flush up there. For sure there is. Yeah. But there's no straight flush out here. So you do have the stone cold nuts.
Right. The queen and the 6 are hearts from the flop. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. Right. So small blind, who is an action player, bets 300 and the big blind calls.
Okay. So 300 into 400 and big blind calls, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And it folds to me.
Uh-huh.
So this is the what I thought was the most interesting decision point of the hand. And obviously I'm going to be raising. My thinking here was that I probably don't want to go pot because first of all, it's not going to be super believable that I have a strong flush on the first board.
Yep. On the top
board. And so if
somebody,
right. Yeah. And so if somebody has a super strong hand on that board, they're probably just going to call me whatever size I make it. So I think by raising, I want to target weaker flushes on the board that I have a flush on.
Yeah. I'm along with you on this one. So because you checked back the turn in position, if somehow I was betting out, which you probably aren't going to find all that much, but if I was betting out with the queen high club flush on top, and then all of a sudden you raise pot, I'm never folding, especially if I have some sort of backup on the bottom, meaning let's say I bet out on the river after this action with queen 9 of clubs, right? Let's say I'm in the small blind, I have queen 9 of clubs for the second nut flush, and then I have a small heart flush or something that's got some sort of showdown like a set on the bottom. I bet the guy calls and then you raise. I'm never ever folding because it's almost impossible that you have the king high flush on top after this action. So I know that I'm good there. So I agree with you with the way that this ran out. You don't really want to pot because anyone with a strong club flush probably should call. So that doesn't really get you anything. So this becomes almost like a pull scenario where you want 2 calls. So you want to raise an amount where you think that you're going to get 2 calls. Now, if it goes 300, so now the pot's 1,000, and then if you were to call the 300, it's 13. So you could make it 1,600 as a pot. Like that's the pot if I'm doing that right. How much did you end up raising to? Did you say? I'm sorry.
1,100.
1,100. So you raised 800 here. So 7, 10. So it's 21, 8 to call. Is that the odds that the other guy would be getting then?
I think that's right. Yeah.
21, 8 to call. I might actually make it smaller, Charlie.
Yeah,
a little bit smaller.
I think it was
I might make
on the
it
big
8.
Side.
I might have made it at like 800 here
instead
of 1,100. So instead of it being, so now 7, 10, it would be 1,800, 500 for them to call, I believe. 7, 10. Yeah, it would be 1,800, 500 for them to call. So, but you do get the idea, but your raise size is actually kind of large though.
Yeah, it was an action player in the small blind. So
Yeah, but here's the thing though. Yeah, it is an action player in the small blind, but here's the thing though. I was thinking about the big blind. Like when you raise to 1100, let's say the small blind calls, right? You're 1100. Because remember, you want 2 callers, right?
sure,
Because he is the first person that bet. What do you think the big blind has to have there to overcall an $1,100 raise?
Yeah, something incredibly strong.
It's crazy, right? Like I can't even like if I'm in the big blind there, like I would. Well, if I'm in the big blind and I had the queen high flush, and I know the small blind is an action player, if I had the queen high flush and then something else, like I don't think I don't really think that the hearts really matter because it really looks like you've got the nut hearts. I think maybe if I have the queen high club flush, I might call depending on how actiony the small blind is, because I'm always assuming you have the nut hearts on the bottom. But and then maybe the reason why I would call with queen high clubs is because I would expect that small blind to lead turn if you had the king high flush. You see what I'm saying? The king high club flush on the turn. So, but yeah, he's got to have something unbelievably strong, right? Because if he's folding out the jack high club flush, you don't want that, right? Like you want to make it small enough so queen and jack clubs. So that's why I would have made it 800. But your thinking is correct.
Yeah, it might not have worked anyway. I mean, he might just fold to any size, honestly. But so what ended up happening on this one is that the small blind jammed for something like 2,700.
So you made it 1,100 and the small blind jammed.
Yeah.
So that's because you hold even before you tell me the answer, because you hold the nuts on the bottom, right? With the ace high hearts. And I'm reading the hand. Obviously, I know the results, but I think the hand, once you get some experience, really looks like ace high hearts. Whatever the small blind has is a terrible play. Because your hand, Charlie, looks so much like nut hearts, because you raise the river like this, why do I think the small blind's jam with any hand is terrible? The small blind knows that obviously, we both know that he doesn't have nut hearts. What was one of the things that we talked about at the beginning of this episode in terms of push-pull?
So, because he's never going to get action unless I have half the board locked up, right?
Well, he doesn't have the nuts on the bottom, and it's pretty obvious that you do, right? There's a player behind him. So let's say he's got
right. He wants
clubs.
to keep that player in. Yeah.
He should never be shoving here with any hand. This is one of the ones I was talking about where it's flushes, right? It's not straight. So there's I don't know if you call this unique nuts, right? Where it's not paired, and the flushes are nuts. He doesn't have nut hearts. You do. Okay. Now, if he's got nut clubs and you're raising here, well, then we 100% know you have nut hearts, right? Say you put yourself in the small blind spot and you have king X of clubs, right? You bet, the big blind calls, and now Charlie raises when the heart on the bottom comes at the end. How often does Charlie have the nut heart flush here when I have nut clubs on top? Probably 100% of the time, right? Literally 100% of the time. So why would I raise to try to knock out the big blind?
Right, yeah.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, keep that guy in. You're not going to get any more money out of me anyway because I'm always getting half the pot.
Right. So he jammed, okay. And then I assume the big blind folded.
Yep.
And then, so what did he have? Did he have king high flush?
He just had the king high hearts. That was it. He has king jack with the king and jack of hearts and either no clubs or one club. So I had two pair on the top board and the nuts on the bottom board, and I scoop.
Now, I'm never going to give this guy credit for this. I don't want to go too far down the road. So you scooped him, right? Mm-hmm. I thought for a second you said he had both flushes, which is still dumb, by the way. Let's just imagine that he had both king high clubs and king high hearts. It's still a dumb raise, right? Because you always have nut hearts. There is an advanced play that I'm never, ever going to give this guy credit for, and his hand's actually not strong enough to do it. So you could say that because if we're in the small blind, and I know Charlie has nut hearts here, if I have something on the top with the king of clubs, okay, meaning that I know that the guy in the big blind does not have the king high flush, I could raise your raise to try to get that guy out to win the top. Oh, do you see what I'm saying? To win the top. But the problem is that his hand isn't strong enough to accidentally lose to you, which is what ended up happening. He lost to your ace three. Let's say he had king of clubs, king of diamonds, 4 of diamonds, 5 of diamonds, which is a straight on top, right? It's a wheel. And he has the nut blocker. you could make a case for that raise making sense to drive the big blind out so that he would chop it with you. But there's no way in hell I'm ever going to get credit for that. And I don't want to go too advanced with that because I think a lot of people would get into trouble if they start thinking about that. You know what I mean? In this case. But yeah, there's that. But I would never do that with one pair because he's going to lose. He's going to lose to you a bunch anyways by accident, which he did. Any two pair, you beat him with 3-8, right? Like if you had if you had deuce 3 or 8-3, you beat him, right? He only has one pair. He only has
right.
kings.
He just has kings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this next hand, another double board PLO bomb pot. This time we are in the cutoff. We're 7-handed.
Okay.
And we have king, jack, 7, 4 with 3 diamonds, including the king.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So king of diamonds, jack of diamonds, offsuit 7, and then a 4 of diamonds. So 350 in the pot heading to the flop.
Okay.
Or the 2 flops. And the first one comes 3-3 deuce with 2 diamonds. And the other one comes ace 7-6 with all diamonds. So I have not much going on the first board except the 2 diamonds, which might not be worth anything. And then on the second board, I have the diamond flush, the nuts.
Right.
The small blind bets 250. The big blind calls.
Okay.
And it folds to me here on the flop.
And what are the stack sizes approximately? Do you remember?
We're several thousand deep.
The reason why I asked that is because you can go a number of different kind of ways with this one. Again, this is a situation where because you flop the nuts on the bottom, right? And you have king jack of diamonds on ace 7-6 all diamonds, right? So when the small blind leads into the field here, what do you think is his most likely board that he is betting?
The top one.
Right. It's the top board here because you've got the nuts on the bottom, right? So, and usually actually here, I would say, I don't know, this is a different small blind from the previous hand, right? I assume.
Correct, yeah.
So if anyone has any type of clue here, if the small blind is leading out and we have the nuts on the bottom, so through card removal, he is most likely going to have either a full house on top already with deuce 3, or he has a 3 and a good flush, like maybe the queen high flush and a 3. Now, he bets and the other guy calls. This is interesting because it changes whether we want to play this push or pull based upon the action and the stack sizes. So I think here, because that small blind lead is so strong, like I just don't see a small blind lead fold range ever here because of the reason the range that I put him on, which is either a boat now or queen high diamonds and a 3 at least, that I guess you could say that you want to play this hand as a pull. Now, I've got a couple of things to say about this, though. First of all, let's go over the easy thing. If it got checked to you, let's say this action didn't happen, it got checked to you, you would want to bet actually for equity protection here. You'd want to bet just to take down the pot. You would want to bet and you'd want everyone to fold because you have nothing on the top. Again, this is 3-3 deuce, and then, well, you have a diamond draw, but there's less of a chance that diamonds are going to come when you've got 3 diamonds in your hand. There's already 8 accounted for.
There's like 1 million diamonds accounted for already.
So you just want to bet and take it down, which is quite common in any form of split pot game. This is different than, this is another concept that I think a lot of people in no limit hold'em kind of have a little bit of trouble with, where you want it kind of like a tournament but it's a cash game. You want to bet to take it down, quote unquote, which is not something that we're really all that accustomed to in no limit hold'em. I mean, in no limit hold'em, there is equity protection, but you many times want to bet to take it down because there aren't many good turn cards or something like that. You know what I mean? Whether that's a form of equity protection or not, no visibility, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of betting to take it down. This would be one of them. Now, number 2, you cannot just blindly go crazy with the nut flush on the flop on one side with nothing going on the other side. It's one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of people make.
Yeah, because they can make full houses, right?
Yeah, because if you flop the nut flush on one side and you, again, I know you've got sort of a diamond draw, but let's just disregard that because the board's paired and there's so many diamonds out. But if you flop the nut flush on one side and you have nothing on the other side, you will get yourself into free roll situations a lot, because if the board pairs on your flush side and let's say you get it in on the flop and you have no chance of winning the top on 3-3 deuce, somebody with a 3 or, whatever basically is free rolling you. So say someone had a 3 on
6-6-3 or something.
I was going to say even 6-7-3, right? 6-7-3 is free rolling you. Any 2 pair, right? On the bottom and something on the top that you can't beat. Now, again, I know that you have diamonds here, but the point being is that you cannot just go nuts when you're deep, especially with the nut flush. You have to wait for safeguards here. So in your case, if you're somewhat deep, because the small blind because it looks like there's, in my opinion, very little chance that there is going to be a lead fold range here because you've got the nuts on the bottom and he's still leading out, I would probably call and wait as opposed to raise now. Because if you raise now, again, you're going to get into a situation where the small blind might jam like 3 deuce and you're not getting that extra money. Unless maybe once in a while you can make a case for if the big blind's a really like large whale and you think he's going to call anyways with a naked 3 or a small flush if you raise now. But in general, I would just call here and then see how the hand develops. But we would probably want to play it as a pull, thinking about that moving on, because there's no fold equity, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Okay.
So I just called.
Okay.
So 1,100 in the pot heading to the turn.
Okay.
And the turn on the top board is an offsuit deuce. So now that one is 3-3 deuce deuce.
Yep.
On the bottom board, it's an offsuit jack.
Okay.
So now ace 7-6 jack on the board, and in my hand I have king jack 7-4 with 3 diamonds.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And,
okay.
And on the top, the board is double paired, 3-3 deuce deuce.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the small blind now bets 800. The big blind folds.
Okay. All right. So the big blind folds. So now, I mean, the only thing that I would say about this is that it's less likely that there's a full house, right?
Right.
Or quads, or, so, we're thinking about what covers the board on the top. It's 3 deuce, right? And deuce is full, which is probably still even an overplay on the flop. Well, now deuce is full, goes down to one combo of quads, and then, 3 deuce. By the way, combinatorically too, like this is kind of interesting. I mean, there's a very easy way to sort of figure out combos. So because there's 2 3s and 2 deuces out there, and there are 4 cards in the deck, right? How many combos of 3 deuce are left, right? Well, there's 2 3s left in the deck, and then there's 2 deuces left in the deck. So you just multiply 2 times 2. So there's 4 combos of 3 deuce left that someone could have in their hand when the board contains 2 3s and 2 deuces in it.
Right.
So it's not like crazy, So, I mean, I gotta be honest with you, like, unless the small blind was just a total like whale, now you're just sort of calling to kind of hang on. And I don't think I can really fold any river here. For the most part, he's going to have 3 deuce in his hand, so he's got to have like working cards. He'd have to have an absolute monster. Like, you can't really fold on the turn, because let's just give him 3 deuce. Like, he'd have to have like 3 deuce and a set, or 3 deuce and 2 pair, and then have the board pair. So,
and even that's kind of questionable, because I have a jack and a 7 in my hand.
Right. Oh yeah,
so
right.
I
You have a
2
7
pair.
in your hand too. Right. Yeah. You have jack.
Even if he has 6s, like I improved to a better full house on a lot of the cards where he makes a full
so
house.
you can't fold, but I wouldn't really be putting money in the pot here, because there's no real way for you, at least the way that I'm reading it, for you to win the top. Even with your diamond draw, he should be full here or have quads. So you kind of have to play it defensively. How much do you have left back?
About 3,000.
3,000, yeah, I would just call. But and also too, Charlie, like even a more defined example here would be if you had king queen of diamonds, and we saw this action. Mm-hmm. If you had king queen of diamonds, then it's almost 100%, right, that he's not betting anything on the bottom, right? Because you're going to have the first and the second nuts on the bottom. Here, once in a great while with king jack, once in a while somebody might have like queen high diamonds, but they should, like I said, it should be queen high diamonds and like a 3 or a boat or something. But if it was a whale, but that's just so unlikely to see someone betting twice with queen high diamonds when it goes call with having nothing on the other side. It's almost irrelevant. But I would play this defensively for these reasons. I would call again.
Okay, so I did move in, which is, I guess, a mistake.
Like if you're just going to call off anyways, I guess moving in's fine. But
and I sort of thought, well, what if I can make him fold a 3?
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, sure. That has some. I mean, at least you're thinking about it correctly. I just cannot imagine a scenario where you have any fold equity with this line in this particular game. I assume he called.
Yeah, and he did have 3 deuce.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we end up chopping.
Awesome. Well, not awesome. I mean, just awesome that because Charlie, I always say this too in the call-in show. Charlie sent me the hands, but he didn't tell me the results. So I'm saying awesome that I read it correctly.
Yeah, so it sounds like the things I'm thinking about are basically right, but the calibration is a little bit off, which makes sense given my lack of experience with these things.
Yeah. I mean, if you think that if you're moving in on the turn because you think that there's fold equity against a naked 3, that's correct thinking. I just would say that the hand reading is just a little bit off because of what we talked about.
Yeah, maybe he never has a naked 3, right?
Yeah, I just, in order for him to have a naked 3, if you go back to what I said in the beginning, if he has any type of competency, he also has to have a queen high flush along with it too. So he's still not folding. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like he's never going to have a naked 3 and nothing that's going to fold. You know what I mean? So that's, or a naked 3 and another thing too is, okay, so here's a hand that's a really big hand that will make you lose in your scenario. Meaning, like, if you got a bad run out, a really, really big hand on both these boards is if he had a naked 3 and a set. If he had a naked 3 and a set, and again, I know there's diamonds on top, but let's pretend that it wasn't diamonds. Let's say he had 3-3 ace-ace, or 3-3, excuse me, let's say he had a 3 and ace-ace, or a 3 and 7-7, or a 3 and 6-6. That's a huge, huge hand. And you have to take a step back, and this is where you can make a lot of money in this game. When you see a monotone board, like we see on one side, and you have something that can beat a flush, and you also have a strong hand on the other side, you can just make a ton of money because people don't know enough to wait, right? They're just going to get it in with the nut flush. But now all of a sudden you've got a set on the monotone board, and the guy's drawing dead on the other side. So if I had 3 ace-ace, right, especially with ace-3 too, that's a huge, huge hand. Now, with that being said, sometimes you have to take a step back, though. That's a huge, huge hand to get it all in heads up. Ace-ace 3, right? On these, but if it's multi-way, though, you have to be cautious because even though you've got the nut draw on the bottom, with a nut full house draw on this monotone board, if you're getting a ton of action on the other side, there's a very good chance you might be beaten right now on the other side. And you could be beaten both ways right now. If someone flopped deuce 3, and then obviously you have a flush. So, there's definitely a little bit of finagling. So Hustler they do a collection every 40 minutes. Is that what it is?
Something like that.
In what, 5-10 and above?
This is 5-10-20.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly how they bill it. They list it as 5-10-20.
So you only really get to see 1.5 double board bomb pots per hour, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's not much. I mean, that's not much to get a whole lot of experience with, like in terms of, playing an 8-hour session. Because in Texas, sometimes there would be games that were entirely double board. I think Squish was telling me that they tried to spread a game that was all double board. That's a good game to learn too if it's not playing Nosebleed States and you're comfortable in it. But one of the things I would say is, again, that we do have an entire sort of section on double board bomb pot, double board PLO bomb pot hands. And there are some of these app games, it's a good, obviously there's risks with the app games, but I know Poker Bros and some other app games, like you can play these games.
Play money, actually, and have no risk.
Play money's kind of...
Yeah, right.
It's tough with play money. But I mean, whatever. Like you can play 50 cents $1 where the ante's, I don't remember what the ante is, but you buy in for $100. I mean, it's good practice. It's just that most of the double board games, at least on Bros, are not bomb pots, but it still is decent practice. There's like only one union that I've come across on Bros where they play 4-card double board PLO bomb pots, and it is micro stakes. And they have higher games in double board PLO bomb pots, but they're 6-card games, which is just entirely different. Like I wouldn't even bother. It's so ridiculous. And that game will never be spread live, so there's really no point. You know what I mean? I did get to play one session of 5-card double board PLO bomb pot at the World Series, and it was a big game. I think it was 100. I think we were playing 100 ante. One session. It only went one night this past summer. I won like, I don't know, $9,000, and I felt like if things had gone my way, I would have won 50. That's how good the game was. You know, so
what was it? Six-handed or something?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was probably 6-handed, which was good.
You couldn't
for
have
me
much
too.
more than that, right?
Well, I mean, you can play Big O. You play Big O 7-handed, which is 5-card. But yeah. I think we were playing 6-handed. And the game wasn't even that good in the sense. What I mean by that is like most of the players sort of knew what they were doing. There was like 1 or 2 spots. You only really need 1 or 2 spots. And again, this goes to the nature of bomb pots and why bomb pots are great in these games, because you're forcing the action with these people. Because again, you can't tell me that someone who's new to the game isn't going to pile in with your hand Charlie on the flop, right? With like the king high flush or not knowing anything. The other thing too is that, as I've said in my videos, you got to definitely watch set over set, because if you're set over set in this game on the same board and you don't have anything going on with your other 2 side cards, like you're going to lose both boards to the person that overset you, right? Because they have a higher pair on the other board too. Like kings versus queens or aces versus set of kings. So, and you can't go nuts with top set on dynamic boards either. So it's an interesting one. Hopefully it will come to Massachusetts at some point too.